Hello and welcome everyone to a game-changing episode, a special bonus episode of Beyond Autistic Burnout. Today, we're diving deep into the secrets of successful job hunting. Join us as we explore real solutions for real career success with the brilliant Scott Birkhead, a seasoned expert with 30 years of experience in recruiting and coaching. Get ready to crack the job search code and find the career path you've been dreaming of. Our conversation promises insights, inspiration, and actionable strategies to empower your professional journey, including some burnout tips. Stay tuned and let's kickstart this transformative discussion today. Welcome to Beyond Autistic Burnout, the talk show designed to empower ADHD autistic professionals like you to thrive in your career, life, and beyond. I'm Carol Jean Whittington, an ADHD autistic business professional who's not just surviving, but thriving after decades in burnout. And I'm thrilled to have you here with us. Each episode, I'll be joined by inspiring guests as we dive deep into transformative strategies and insights. We'll show you how to break free from burnout, ignite sustainable energy, and embrace your authentic self. Together, we'll navigate career challenges, nurture relationships, and excel in every aspect of life. It's time to fuel your success and embark on your journey of empowerment. Let's take this incredible journey together. Get ready to be an authentic leader and unleash sustainable energy in your life. Welcome to Beyond Autistic Burnout. Let's start thriving. Guys, my guest today is such a treat. We have a distinguished guest joining us, Scott Birkhead, who brings a wealth of experience in the world of recruiting and career coaching with almost 30 years in the industry. Scott's mission is all about helping individuals connect their unique selves with their professional path. His focus on authenticity and real solutions is what makes him a standout in his field. It's an absolute pleasure to have him here today to share his insights on cracking the job search code. Welcome to the show, Scott. And I have to say that one of the things I absolutely adore about you and that really has stood out to me is when you're talking about job search, when you're talking about the whole approach to that, you're just so practical. You really help sort of decrease the anxiety around this entire process.
Well, thank you very much. You called me brilliant in the intro, and nobody calls me that hardly at all. So you're one of my favorite people now. That's it.
Well, I just call it like I see it. And I really do appreciate you coming and sharing today so openly and just with all of the wealth of knowledge that you bring to this conversation, because this is right now, there's a lot of layoffs happening.
Yeah.
There have been big chunks of layoffs, starting last April and into May, and we've just seen a whole other round of layoffs happening. And that is really terrifying for a lot of folks. Especially what I'm hearing from a lot of people is, gosh, this is a job I've been in for 10, 15 years. This is a company I've been with for a really long time, and I just got laid off.
Yeah. Yeah, they come in waves. I just went through my third one myself not long ago. So 3 times in my career, I've been without a job, sometimes the first 2 times I didn't even have a resume together. And so it's a tough place to be. And I have a lot of money fears from my early childhood. And so when you combine money fears with not knowing what to do with a lot of other people in the same boat, the market not particularly good, then it gets to be a real challenge to manage it, to navigate it successfully, both emotionally, internally, and then externally as you try to go find a new job as well.
Oh, that the internal it is just so hard. Some of the things I've been hearing from folks who've been going through the layoffs lately, especially when it's a job that they've had for a while, is like just the anger, like really feeling really upset, because for a lot of folks, this was sort of like out of the blue.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
you go through those stages of grief.
Ooh,
Certainly anger is one of those, and denial and sadness, and you lose a little confidence in yourself. Yeah, all of those sorts of things. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Scott, since you have so much experience with this, it's like, what's the first step in that once, like if we've gotten laid off, or if something has happened and we've noticed, hey, this is really not working, this isn't a fit anymore, and I need to shift, how do we start to move through those emotional grief layers and just that awareness that like maybe this isn't a fit for me anymore? How do we start to take those first steps in that?
Well, anytime I've been coached through, and I have been in coaching for a long time myself, I consistently go back to coaches at regular times in my life. Many times I've been coached through these things. Anytime I coach other people, it's a combination. So the first is to detach yourself from what you're feeling and look at a framework that allows you to process through that. And so the grief framework is a very good one for getting laid off, right? What are those stages? Which one am I in? How do I process through those? Find some people to talk to. So you detach yourself to some degree. And then as you move through those, then you reattach to the right things in here that allow you to go and approach the task of job getting in a way that really will serve you best and serve the people that you're going to work for best as well. So in a way, it's a detachment first. So you spend some time detached and you walk through those phases and you find a framework. That's how I do it. I need a mechanical framework to deal with it. And then once that framework starts to work, then you reattach to the good things on the inside of yourself, and then you walk down that road. So that's how I recommend that people do it. And that's how I've done it myself.
Oh, that is so good. So Scott, I really want to dig into one of the first sort of things that we've got on our talking points here that we wanted to cover, and that was know yourself. And I think that kind of leads into, sort of once you step back and get a bit of perspective to kind of de-escalate the emotions that are happening around your job, how do we get to know our, I mean, a lot of times, especially if this is a late in career shift, maybe it's you determine this isn't maybe the same industry, or if you want to stay in the same industry, changing. How do we kind of step back and kind of get to know ourselves as we begin the job search process? Because, we're growing and changing every day.
We sure are. And not only in jobs, but then the rest of our lives influences how we feel about work and how we go to work, how we show up at work, and work influences the rest of those. And so I learned in college that I could do complicated math, but I will never be a complicated mathematician. And so I take very mechanical. One of the reasons I'm so practical is because I have to have a practical solution to do it. So really it's just a retouching, right? The secrets to reconnecting with yourself and the secrets to being really good in the job search are really inside of you. And there are plenty of tools available to help you recall what those things are. And so your values, what are your core values? Walk through some exercises to really understand again and reset with your values. Our values change as we go through life. If we go through stages of life, my values changed when I became a parent, and they're changing now. I'm a grandparent. You can see some grandkid pictures on the wall behind me. They're changing. And so you have to reconnect with your values. I think you have to know your strengths. I think people have to be really honest about their needs, about expressing what kinds of fundamental needs they have in the course of their life. And then as you look back at your career, you look and you see patterns. So values and needs are some of the core elements of a human being. And then those manifest themselves as you do work, and you start to see patterns. And once you recognize and reconnect with those patterns, then you have really what you need both internally and externally to go do the job search. And being pedantic is a good word. Being pedantic and walking through those exercises like you're evaluating a separate product that's outside of yourself instead of yourself is a really good way again to refresh yourself. One of the surprises I had when I first started doing career coaching and job search coaching was that people can exhibit and are really good at certain patterns and certain things, problems they choose to solve, how they approach those problems, the tools they use, what unique flavors they add to it, but they don't see it in themselves. You get blind to yourself after a while. And so going through those exercises again, you remind yourself, and then you've repackaged yourself as a product out on the market. And that's the good way to do it.
Oh, I love that approach. I'm always talking about you got to know your needs. The number one contributing factor to burnout is chronic and consistent unmet needs.
Absolutely.
And when we're out of alignment, and I call that the integrity gap. And it's not a lack of personal integrity, but it's the gap between who you know yourself to be internally and innately and how you've actually been showing up in the world. And the bigger the gap is between those two when they're not in alignment, the more draining it is.
I totally
more
agree.
Exhausting.
I find that most people that are really lost in the job search are really unhappy with what jobs they get, they just don't know themselves at all. I find that people that are kind of in that yo-yo state, that mid-alignment, where some days they feel great, some days they don't feel great. That's really the secret a lot of times, is they don't really know, what do I need? They know themselves a little bit, but they don't know what they need, and they don't know how what they're doing serves them. And so again, there's some pedantic ways to sort of add up, do a personal P&L, right? What parts of my day are giving me a profit and which ones are giving me a loss? And then as people become very aligned, then typically they want to know, how do I maximize that? How do I really get the most? And how do I broaden my impact? It's not about internally more, but it's how do I make an impact out in the world? So kind of 3 levels of alignment. But yeah, people in the middle, and people that are job searching often start to question themselves. Was I really aligned? Do I really know myself? And so again, good to do a reset. Come back, do a reset, refresh all of that information, that knowledge about yourself, and reconnect emotionally with what's really great about yourself.
Oh, that's a good one. And that's one of the hardest steps, I think, is sometimes just feeling like you can safely connect with that you're allowing the space for that. Because I think sometimes we get in this habit, and it is truly a habit, but it's also sometimes just the stress responses. We just keep moving. We're like sharks. I mean, we're just not stopping. We got to always have something, and we're constantly moving, and we don't slow down enough to give ourselves that space. Like before we came live, you were talking about, you take time to kind of give yourself some space now.
I do. I've built, over the years, I've built a kind of a personal profile document that tells me who I am and what I'm about, and what partners I need, what things I think I'm good at. And it's something that I refresh on occasion, but for me, again, I can get lost in that busyness it's a constant pull on me. It's that chattering in my brain. It's that chattering in my heart, really. And I can lose myself there. And so I have a regular time where I meditate, and I reset, and I do some consciousness meditation, which I think is good for everybody. And that happens in different formats. But once I do that, there are times where I just bring myself back, and I open that personal profile, and I remind myself, this is what I'm about, and this is what I'm here for, and this is the things that I'm good at. And I do a check. I just booked four weeks worth of calendar events. Which ones of these really are serving me, and which ones am I really going to be able to serve well, and which ones do I need to go back and say no to, right? So it's a constant thing, because I lose myself in that same energy, that shark energy. Just keep moving, that chattering monkey in my brain, right? I do.
Oh, definitely. And Martin hey, Martin, we're so glad you're joining us. Martin says self-awareness and mindfulness. Those are 2 things that were coming up for him while you were talking. And
Absolutely.
Elsa said, such great advice, Scott. And Elsa was really appreciating that. Thanks so much, Elsa. So Scott, so that we can kind of dive into some of the solutions, let's kind of talk about for a minute some of the things that you see a lot of job searchers, a lot of job candidates and seekers trying to do, or things that they're doing where they're not actually getting the results that they want. What are some of those sort of, maybe even we could say maybe a mistake, but what are the things that people are doing that may not be serving them right now?
Well, you and I talked when we first met about the, right. There's kind of this systemic, the systems that we use to both fill jobs, and I've built a lot of these systems as a recruiting manager, as a recruiter, right? The systems we use and then the corresponding tools that job seekers use really push us towards experience, qualifications, tool sets, right? Things that are at the top of a pyramid of information that eventually, before you make a hiring decision or take a job decision, you want to know things all along that pyramid. And those things are at the top. They're the shallowest piece. And I mean shallow in every sense of the word, right? That's where we talk a lot about what's important, and the system and the words we use initially in the job search and the screening interviews and things like that really push us towards that. Are you qualified? Do you have 5 years of this? Do you have this tool? Do you have that tool? And oftentimes those really have nothing to do with what's important when the job gets filled, or what the manager wants, or what you bring to the table. And so,
right, but we're led to believe those were the important things.
Well, because I think the people that have structured those tools over the year, the industry, the HR industry in particular, is a fabulous group of people, but they tend to, you have to organize, you have to build a construct where you can organize the share of information. And that's just the way we started. And all those systems were built back before a lot of the more modern thinking about how to really fit somebody to a job, and competency hiring versus skill hiring, a lot of those things. And so I think the constructs are just old and they don't serve us particularly well anymore. I'm still building those systems, by the way, and I still have to build them that way because that's how the tools, all the technologies and the tools are built that way. So in answer to the first question, stop thinking up here and start thinking at the thicker layers. And the thicker layers are what problems, what opportunities, right? When I tell people, go think about your potential hiring manager, the person that's going to hire you. Think about them as as a friend. They have a job that's good for you. They can't hire you because you're a friend or you're a relative. And you sit down in a restaurant with them and you say, hey, what's going on? And they start to tell you about what's going on. I hear you're hiring. Why are you hiring? What the heck is that all about? What are you looking for? And they start to tell you. What they won't talk about is all this stuff that we talked about, the top of the pyramid. What they'll talk about is, here's the 4 or 5 problems I have. Here's the 4 or 5 challenges. Here's the opportunities I have. Here's why those are important. And almost always when they express that, there's a gap. I teach people how to think about like sellers, and buyers always have a gap. There's a gap between where they are today and where they need to be given that hire. They're hiring somebody to take them from A to B typically. And so in the middle of there is a gap. And if job seekers will start to think about that gap, what is that gap about? What are the emotions in that gap? What are the challenges and problems represented by that gap? How's the manager wrestling with that every single day? Right? I tell them literally sit and think about that manager in that chair at work, facing those 2 or 3 gaps that they know are probably happening, and think about how do they feel and who's yelling at them and what do they really hope happens and what are they afraid of and what are they angry about? And then focus on rebuilding your marketing. Your whole approach should be built on those gaps, not on this stuff up here, but the stuff below that. And what you'll find is when you start talking about that, especially in interviews, and so typically screening and first interviews happen up here. Second interviews happen at the problem, challenge, opportunity level. Subsequent interviews really happen down at the brand level and the values level. They want to know who you are as a person. So who you are as a person really is wired and geared towards solving those kinds of problems. Then you really have a connection that makes sense. And so rewire your search. Don't think about skills and opportunities. Don't look at that stuff on the job description. Look at the other things. Look at the other clues there and make sure that when you communicate and you start to make those connections, that you're talking about those problems and opportunities. Don't talk about yourself. Talk about their needs and their gaps and their problems and opportunities.
Oh man, I'm telling you, when you shared that with me, it was like so many light bulbs were going off because as you know, I think just I'm very black and white, and a lot of autistic ADHD folks are.
Yes.
You tell me this is the thing and I believe this is the thing and this is how you do this. And so I'm following, the methodology that I'm being given.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really what's happening.
Well, I think you get there if you get noticed. So if you put a resume in and it's the right kind of job and your resume is the right kind of resume, and you're one of, right, there's going to be yesterday I saw a talent acquisition director job that had 450 applications in 2 hours. 2 hours. So if you're one of the first 450 and the recruiter gets to you before they push enough work down into the funnel, then you'll have those conversations. That's what you'll talk about with the manager in the second interview or the manager's boss in the third interview. That's what you'll talk about. You just got to get to it faster. And you got to get around that glut of resumes by having that dialogue directly as fast as you can with the manager or the person you think is the manager, rather than waiting to go through the system and waiting in line. Shouldn't be waiting in line very often.
Okay, so we've had lots of layoffs here. So we got
Yes.
a lot of job talent candidates
Yes.
in the pool.
Yes.
We're seeing, and have been for the last few months in particular, these massive applications being just flooding in. We've got these applicant tracking systems that are keyword searching and helping to sort because human resources departments are taxed to the limit in most companies right now. So how do we as job seekers start to circumnavigate this in a way that we're not doing it in a way that's turning people off? Because, sometimes you got like the rogue person. I'm always the rogue person. The rogue person. And they're like, nobody told you could come in this side door. Where did you come from? How do we do this so that people aren't like, whoa, but they're more welcoming to us going around some of these things?
Yeah.
And how do we begin to do that?
Well, yeah, eventually you have to put your application in. The applicant tracking systems are connected to the background check systems, to the onboarding systems, to the payroll systems. And eventually you want to get paid, you have to go through those systems. But I guess a couple things first. That ATSs do not, and this is a common misperception, ATSs do not eliminate people. Having a technology eliminate people and AI technology eliminate people would run afoul of almost the core of most HR laws, and so discrimination laws. And so it doesn't happen. You hear a lot about that. It's not true. Some ATSs allow you to build knockout questions, and so they'll help you stack rank candidates. But even if you get a knockout, you're still in the system. You're still aligned to that job. The system will not automatically eliminate you for that job. The recruiter may focus instead on the people that are stacked ranked at the top, but it won't eliminate you from the bottom. So I think there's some misperceptions about that. From an applicant tracking system, right? Keywords are important. Do keyword matching. If you're applying for a set of jobs and you're getting no replies, you probably should find a word cloud tool and put your resume in as a word cloud, and then put all the jobs you're in as a word cloud and see what matches up and what doesn't match up. You may be using the wrong terminology. You may be using the wrong keywords. You may be using, some companies use really old terminology for jobs, whereas all the new jobs are in a completely different terminology, and you may need to translate some of that. And so be a little pedantic about that too. What actual words, right? And what actual words are in the job descriptions, and are you matching those things up? Now, you don't want to create experience. You don't want to fake experience, but if you have the same experience, it's just called something different, you should maybe think about how to get those keywords into your resume. But aside from that, again, if you start thinking about those managers and that problems, you see a job. I keep doing this because I don't think when I do this, my gestures are going out of the picture. So when you see the job and you look at the job and you see all the keywords, within that job are probably clues as to what kinds of challenges and problems that manager's having. We'll talk about how to get to the clues in a minute. But once you find those, assuming that your resume speaks to those, then what you have to do is you have to go into a tool like a LinkedIn, and you have to go and find people that are probably the manager or attached to that manager. So I tell people, build a little org chart, right? If you're a recruiter, you probably work for a recruiting team lead or recruiting manager who works for a vice president or director who works for right? There's an org chart of people, and there's probably people around you. There are probably coordinators and analysts and people doing work in talent acquisition. So a tool like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, great tool, $99 a month. If you can afford $99 a month for 3 or 4 months in your job hunt, you can look and peel a company back and find anybody at any level in any function in any company. As long as they're on LinkedIn, you can find them. And so now you have an org chart of people, and you've already pre-imagined that manager sitting in their office, and you can see on that job description what you think the challenges, problems, opportunities are. Now you can reach out and speak directly to them. And the way you do that is short messages, focused on the problem and how you might potentially solve that problem, and inviting them for interaction that is not formal interview. And I would say as a last point, no guilt, no poor me messages. I need a job, please God, right? Those are messages that do not resonate with most managers who are facing hordes of people telling them the same thing. It's a human reaction to not resonate with that message. So again, focus on them, make sure you have the right problems in mind, short messages, and invite them to connect. And then instead of just applying for the job, now you have an org chart. Now go take 6 or 7 shots at that job with the people in the org chart by talking about that problem and saying, hey, I've been right in the middle of that. I'd like to chat with you about how we solved that problem, right? One of my very first clients did that. She saw jobs at a medical device manufacturer in customer support, that just tons of jobs over and over and over again, all the time, 15, 20 open customer support jobs. And she worked in customer support in a software company, very different industry, very different level of support, product complexity. But she found the VP for that over that group at the local office of the medical supply company. And she said, you're having a lot of turnover in that group, or you're adding jobs. Either way, that adds some complexity. And it probably means you're going to have challenges with training people, challenges with how qualified people are. Customers are going to complain you're losing and changing people all the time. But there's some certain problems that go with that. I've solved that. Would you like to have coffee and chat about that? And he said, heck yes, I would. And he went and had coffee with her. And then he invited her back, and she met a few people, and he created a job for her. So the problem was the way that she got to him and the way she got the job. Not the qualifications, not waiting for the ad, not lining up the resume. She didn't even apply for the job until she got the job. So again, that's the epitome of the approach, is to do that.
Oh, and this is something that I have recognized in my lifetime and in my career journey. And I have worked in multiple industries throughout my life as a professional. And it's really interesting because the majority of jobs that I have ever gotten in my life have always been through having conversations like that.
Hmm.
And I mean, yes, I've applied directly for jobs, but those weren't the ones that I usually got, or those weren't the ones that I usually had the best start with. And it was interesting when you and I started having this conversation, I went, wow, you know, I grew up with my parents always telling me it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Hmm.
And it really it is. And as an autistic ADHD person, sometimes that was also a challenge for me because I'm like, well, hey, I can fix your problem. I know the solution, I know all the solutions to this. But I wouldn't show up to deliver that in a way that would be received. And I love how you just talked about this. And it was just, how can I be of service? Like, I've got some information and some solutions. I'd love to share it with you. I'm not looking for anything from you, but really just show up to share it. And in reciprocity, the organic next step is usually that you get invited to the party,
And
so
you
to
have the
speak.
dialogue and you get to know people at a level that's important for them before it's important for you, right? And you do those things. In fact, people that are really good at long-term career management, career marketing, this is the business they're in. They're in the business of knowing people and talking about the core challenges and issues in their industry. They don't have to go look for jobs. Jobs come and find them because they're consistent about this and they use these tools and they use this approach. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. And the right approach and the right messaging is personal. It's not salesy. It doesn't use any of the sales language. It's just you speaking. And if your voice is a little different as you speak, and I don't mean verbally, I mean if the way you say things is unique and different, good. That's good. That's not, you don't want to sound like everybody else. You don't want to sound like Scott Birkhead or like the used car salesman. Not that I'm a used car salesman, but you want to sound like yourself. You want to be unique. Again, but it's the uniqueness of the voice, but it's focused on them and their challenges and their problems and their opportunities as represented in that job description, right?
And I love it because that kind of brings us back to where we started in the conversation, was knowing yourself.
Yes.
Know what your strengths are. Know what skill set you have and how you approach problem solving, right? And I think that's one of the biggest advantages to our nonlinear thinking
Yep.
neurotype folks like
Right.
me, is that we do bring a whole lot of advantages to the party, and we bring these different solutions and we see things in a different way that
Yes.
really help solve problems so beautifully. But no one ever talks to us. And I love, because I love this conversation, Scott, because you do talk in the way that says, look, this is how you actually apply this. You're very strategic in saying, just step in this direction, take this particular step directly. Don't show up all salesy. Don't do the keyword, regurgitation of stuff, but just show up and say, look, hey, I've encountered this problem before. And I've also noticed that if this is a problem or challenge that you see showing up, these are some other things that may be happening that may
Mhm.
be on your radar or that may not have come up yet. And I'd love to share with you just sort
You
of
bet.
what my experience is around that.
You bet.
I mean, think if
And-
you were the manager or the director on the other side of that conversation. Heck yes, I want to know what you know.
Absolutely. And sometimes people tend to view, and I did this for a long time. I had some awful things happen in my childhood. And it was a long time where I would look at myself in the mirror and I would see, right, tall, blonde hair, blue eyed, neurotypical white male. I was supposed to be a certain thing. And inside I was almost none of that, right? I was a hurt, scared, crushed little boy. And as I got to my mid 40s, it took me to my mid 40s to get square with all this, right? But as I got to my mid 40s and I realized some of that is awful, but it's not non-standard. It happens to people. These things happen to people. And as I learned to look at what had that created in me, what good things, what benefits came out of that. And as I was able to embrace and get past the fear of being found out and get past the fear of thinking that I might be abnormal and really embrace the things that meant to me, I became a more complete package for the people that hired me and for the people I interacted with. And so it's not just the good things. It's not just the values you think people respond to. It's not just all the things that you think, are normative and are people are going to respond well to. It's all of you. It's all of you. It's the things you're afraid of. It's the rest of it. And when you embrace that as a complete package, you become a whole person, and then you're a better marketer. You're better able to share. You're better able to really lean into the work that you get. Right.
Absolutely. And we've got some great comments in the chat.
My friend Elsa.
Oh.
Hi, Elsa. Elsa's wonderful. Thanks for
Oh
commenting.
man.
10
Yes.
years. Well, that's pretty good. I feel good. I was 10 years ahead. No, I don't feel good. I'm glad you got there. I'm glad I got there. Right. I'm still get there. I try to get there every day. Right. Try to get there every day.
Me too. I was in like my early mid 40s when it finally all started clicking for me. And I'm 49 this year, but I'll be 50 in May. And I just there's also this place, and you and I really wanted to have a conversation around this because I think this is such a big part of the job search process, and that is your energy management. Because I got a lot of questions in our lunch and learn over the last 2 weeks from folks going, how the heck do I go through the job search process without burning out so that I can actually show up as my best self and not flaming because I've been so drained by the job search process? And you had some really great sort of strategy approaches to this that I would love for you to share, Scott.
Well, it's the same thing I said before. There's some things you do that are kind of pedantic. And one of them is to remove yourself from those feelings. Burnout, depression, sadness, feelings of lack of self-worth, all of those things are common across people that struggle with a job search for any period of time. And I don't mean struggle internally. I mean, just, it's hard to find a damn job, right? So you pull yourself away from that and look at the stages of grief, or look at something along those lines that helps you to understand what you're going through, and then process through those and figure out where you're at. Having a friend to talk to, having a group to go to talk to, having a coach to talk to. There's all kinds of ways to get through that. But I think first of all, distancing yourself from what you're feeling. Don't wallow in that feeling. I think is first of it. I think secondly, figure out what you're afraid of. I grew up in a household with no money, where money was the exploding topic in our lives. When it came up, everything just went to hell, right? And so I think you have to figure out what you're afraid of, and you have to counter that. One of my first coaches said, Scott, you're not selling a lot right now. Why don't you go get a part-time job? And I got a part-time job, and it was amazing. It took my mind away from things for a while. I got a little paycheck every once in a while. I had some part-time benefits, and I didn't have to have all of the pressure on each little activity that I was doing. But I think the third thing, and again, according to my job search philosophy, is get really serious about applying for the right job. Stop spreading yourself out. You invest a little bit of hope every time you apply for a job, right? You see the job, you get a little hopeful, you go, ooh, that looks like that's me. Everybody says, that's me. I see that in that job, right? And so as you do that, and then you think, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. And you do all that stupid work, and you fill out the forms, and you say yes to all the questions, and you hit the button, and then you track it. If you got a good tracker, and that takes time. And so you invest all this energy and all this hope in it. And I'll bet as I look at people that I've coached in the job search, 2/3 of the jobs they're applying for are not them. They're not. Right? Elsa can answer this because she's a recruiter. As a recruiter, you get 100 resumes for a job. 80 of them are not right for the job. They just aren't right. That people make an awful lot of assumptions about what they can and can't do. And again, as a recruiter, you have a certain obligation to look for certain things. Even if they're at the top of that pyramid, you have a certain obligation to look for things to take back to that manager. You're not going to take 100 people back. You're not doing your job if you take 100 people back. And so you, as a job seeker, you have to figure out which are the right 20 for me to apply to. And then that 20% investment is invested in the right things. And you're not just going to invest it in the online application, but you're going to go find that org chart. You're going to find those 4 or 5 people. So instead of taking 80 shots at jobs that aren't the right fit, you're going to take 80 more shots. You're going to take all those shots and invest them in the right kinds of jobs at the right kinds of places with the right kinds of problems. So you're not just going to the online system, but you're going to go to the boss, the potential boss's boss. You're going to go to the person next to them. You're going to go to the person under them, and you're going to ask different questions. You're going to try to get some connection with that job. And so in that way, you invest hope in the right things. You should look at your fears again and find a way to negate some of those fears by countering them actively. And then I think just having a process to work through What are the emotions I'm feeling? What are the challenges? Are those normal? How should I process them? Who could I talk to them about that? That's the stuff that pulls you back from that. You always feel like you're at the edge of some dark abyss because you can't find a job and you have to pay bills and your family depends on you and all those things. And so you have to pull back from that. You have to be really smart and really be focused about how you spend yourself, just like you do later when you get the job. You need to figure out how to be focused about how you spend yourself, right?
Oh, totally. And I think sometimes that fear approach, especially when we've got financial pressures, it's that sort of shotgun scatter approach. Like I'm just gonna like broadcast and submit as many applications, and I'm just gonna go on like a volume, right?
Mm.
And I love that you were talking about, actually that's working against you. And when we're talking about expending your energy, this was something that you mentioned that I thought, that's something we need to highlight when we talk live with everybody. It's when you have that sort of broadcast approach to like,
Mm.
let me put out as many applications as I can, you are putting that hope out there and you're also investing your energy in all of that. And then you're not really effectively doing it because then you can't keep up with each one of those. You're not
You don't have the
really,
belief, right? You don't have the belief. You look
yeah,
at 10 jobs and go, I'm going to apply for all 10 of these today. Are you really going to take time to customize the resume, customize the cover letter, really invest in focusing on that problem, really invest in time in figuring out what the problem is? And you want, right? Our Western culture tells us more is better, more and speed and blah, blah, blah. And yet most philosophies say the way to get to really greatness is less. You condense down, you have less. And so you focus on less. And so I think again, learning how to figure out which jobs, and it's on our list to talk about, but learning how to figure out which jobs represent the kinds of problems and the kinds of people you think you'd really fit with. That's one of the primary skills you have to learn, right? And as you learn to do that and qualify, then you'll know. You can walk away at the end of the day and know, I only applied for 4 jobs today, but they were exactly the right jobs. And I took 5 shots at each one of them. And that's good enough. And now I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to come home and cook dinner and meditate and talk to my wife like a normal human being, or my husband like a normal human being, and not like like I'm scared to death. Right. Yeah.
right. Oh my gosh. That, and I think that's another key takeaway is when you're in the job search process, your network of support folks is so critical. It really is. Are you showing up? Like my friend Tracy Borson hosts the No Pitch Networking. I mean, just showing up to that event and just knowing that I don't have to be any particular way. I can show up and share who I am. And it's a great place to kind of also practice really talking about who I am and what I do. And I can also sort of get some feedback if I'm asking, find those groups. But it's also one of the things that you do that I think is really important because for a lot of us, we've never had anyone strategically guide us in our career to start honing in and refining these skills that you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
And, how does someone start to find a career job coach, someone who has the expertise to sort of navigate this? Because, one of the things I would be asking is, well, really, how important is it for me to tailor my resume and cover letter and approach for each job that I do? Because that's really labor intensive.
It is labor intensive. And I think there are different levels of customization that you can do. Most people that I used to teach that you should take your resume, right? I coach people that were 15, 20 years in their career, and they were trying to boil it down into a two-page job description or resume. And I would say, really? And the way that I taught them was to build a long form resume. Don't necessarily teach this anymore, but when they built that long form resume, they'd have 15, 18, 19 pages of all the really great problems they'd approached and how they'd done it and all the details required, right? Things that, right. It was like if you went into an interview and you fell in love with the manager and they fell in love with you and you had a 4-hour conversation. That's what that resume was like. Right. But then from that, you could look at the job and say, these are the 3 primary problems. You could go through and you could pick, right? Here's the different pieces. Then you pull that out and you condense that. And what I found after a while is that people generally have 3 or 4 challenges, problems, opportunities that in their field, they're really good at solving. And so one way to customize is just to think about what are those 3 challenges and problems and opportunities and write a different resume for each one of those. Not that you leave the other stuff out, but you highlight, you emphasize that particular thing. So then when you see the job ad that says, I'm having these 2 particular challenges, you can go to the resume and say, I need this one. So it's a bit of a different approach. And then as you write the cover letter, you can say, I saw these things in the job ad. These look like problems that you're having. I'll bet it's causing the A, B, and C. And here's the way I've approached this in the past, right? That's the right way to customize, where it doesn't take a ton of energy. You're not rewriting every time. But again, it requires that you really know yourself. It requires that you do really an exhaustive sort of inventory and documentation of all of the different things you've done, and then figuring out what are the categories that you most want to market yourself for. So it requires a little bit of work up front, but all the work is up front. So then when you get to the job search, it's a little easier it takes less time to customize, right?
Absolutely. And I think you just gave one of the most like crackerjack insights right here when we're talking about managing our energy and how do we go through this process without going into burnout. It's number one, find someone who can guide you. Make sure that you're actually investing up front. Do get a career coach, do get somebody who has the background like Scott does in the recruiting industry so that you can invest the energy that you have really strategically. Make sure that you're finding out, what is it that I really want to do? What are my strengths? What are the problems that I solve? How do I build out this long form so that going forward, and pacing yourself in this process, right? And also sort of like Elsa said, when you're applying for a job that's not them, this is what she tells a lot of her career coach clients, they're setting themselves up for receiving another rejection email. This
Right.
is can be a very emotional process because we get into our heads and our heart about how worthy we are if we've
Yes.
been rejected. And if
Yes.
you've got some rejection sensitivity, folks, I got some. And when you're in burnout, that rejection sensitivity is heightened. It's even bigger, and it makes it even harder to navigate. And so I love what you talk about how are we being strategic and how are we investing in ourselves up front so that we're aligning, so that we're creating the systems and the understanding and the structures so that this process is really much more effective. It's less draining. It's less emotionally taxing overall. I mean, holy cow, the just drop all these whiz pop incredible insights. Scott, keep going.
Well, and I'll tell you, as you look at coaches, and there are tons of job seeker coaches out there. I would be leery of anybody that's teaching you tricks and tactics. It feels like, oh, you just do these two things, these two tricks, and you'll be through the door. That's not normally true. And I've been in the recruiting industry for 30 years, and on the vendor side, on the job board side, everybody always thinks they have the next best thing, and the next best thing, the fundamentals of this haven't changed. It's still two human beings talking about what the core needs are and how they want to solve that problem. And then the other person talking about why that's important to them, why they want to be involved in that. That's what you got to get to. And so anything that doesn't speed or ease your way to the right conversations with the right people about that is probably not worth the time or the money that you'd invest in it. And if it's tips and tricks on the job hunt, it doesn't give you anything for after. Because the nice thing about a really personal and an in-depth personality approach is it serves you in every other way. I did executive presence coaching when I got my first director job. And you know what it was? Know yourself. Be authentic about yourself. Learn to be that way regularly. Figure out what parts of you are leaking out that aren't authentic, and figure out how to squelch those a little bit, right? That's all it was. Authenticity and being true to yourself and understanding yourself and being comfortable and at comfort with yourself is the way to approach job seeking, promotions, executing your work, moving up in life. It's the key to everything, right? I think it's the key to everything. So I'm not telling you which coaches to look at or don't look at, but if it sounds like it's tricky, some new technique, do this, and I guarantee you results. That's horse hockey. Probably you already know that. If you're listening to this, don't follow that. Go find somebody that helps you understand yourself and take some different approaches. My approach all comes from the direct marketing world. So when I first started teaching people how to do this, there's a whole part of the marketing world that's called direct response marketing that says, think about what problems and what emotions you're having, your buyer's having about that, and figure out how to stimulate those in the right way. So if you stimulate them, then they respond. They literally turn to you and they go, oh, I need to hear more about this. That's what you're trying to accomplish as you market. You got to do it honestly. You got to do it with integrity, and you got to do it in a way that doesn't push people. But once you know yourself and you feel comfortable about what you're looking for, then you should be able to apply the techniques without ever feeling trashy or making people feel bad.
Yeah, and that is so important. And I love it because if you guys want to learn a little bit more and take it a little bit deeper about learning more about being all of yourself in the job search, Scott has been very generous and has a wonderful article that'll be coming out on the Brain Dump blog in a few days so that you can take this information and go a little bit deeper and really start honing in on all of you and your authentic self in the process. So Martin had a comment in the chat, and I think this is kind of important because this is when I talk about accommodating and accessibility and how do we navigate some of the challenges that we face as autistic ADHDers in the job search. Martin said, in theory, yes, this is great, talking about long form resume, but I'm dyslexic and also tailoring a CV is energy draining. He said, but the autistic part of him pushes him through. And I totally get the pushing through. But here's something that I found. It's really, and I think Scott and I kind of talked about this too, there's a lot of resume folks out there, but when you can get some assistance, there's some really wonderful tools out there now that can actually help you organize, put these things in. I use a lot of dictation. I have dyscalculia as well as dyslexia. So for me, especially late in the day, a lot of words and a lot of organization is really hard. So a lot of times you can just have all these in some swipe, I call them swipe files, and you create these problems that you solve in swipe files, and you have sort of a format that you use. Then you're just kind of grabbing and cutting and pasting, and then you can kind of just double check stuff. And that's why it's really great to kind of bring someone on board if you can to help you navigate that, to say, hey, Scott, this is what I've got for this job. This is what I found. Could you take a look at it and let me know where we might need to tweak it? Or, you find somebody that serves you in that way, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I totally get that parts of this are more accessible to some people and less accessible to others. But I think that the principles. So yeah, you're right. Find providers that can help you adapt the principles. A lot of resume writers, one resume, 2 pages, got to have the right keywords. It's the format. It's this, that, the other. And again, that's at the top of the pyramid, not at the bottom of the pyramid where you want to be. And so if you can find a resume writer that'll help you, it's like saying, I'm a car. Buy me, I'm a car. But you don't know what they want. Do they need something to pull something? Do they need something to haul?
You got to have the features. You got to have the heated seat.
And so you can't be all cars to all people, but you can figure out what 2 or 3 things can you do better than or as well as other cars. And you can write resumes that represent each one of those, right? With the full story, with all of the details, all accurate, all truthful and honest, but there's still 3 different sorts of use cases for what that car looks like. And that's what a good resume writer should do. A resume writer that says, hey, for $250, I'll make sure you can, again, the common thing today is I'll get you through the keyword matching. Again, some of that happens, but not a lot of that. There's not a lot of filtering by keywords in applicant tracking systems. I know. I've built out, I've bought, I've repurposed, I've restructured applicant tracking systems more than a dozen times in my career. I know how the tools work. They don't work that way. They don't work by just looking at keywords and saying, don't talk to these people. You have to talk to these people. So resume keywords are not important. What's important, again, is you thinking past the resume submittal to the point where you're going to be talking to that person and then building a resume that pushes you towards that point faster. That's the issue. There are providers out there that'll help you to do that. It'll cost you a little bit more. It'll take a little bit more time, but there are providers that can help you do that. And then that issue again of customization isn't each one at a granular level, but it's 2 or 3 categories of jobs, and you just have to go look for the jobs, right?
Oh man. And I think that is something that is so important. And I'm so glad that you said it. There are umpteen gazillion articles out there coming out daily about keywords. And so I think so many people just get caught on that, and they get really entrenched in the sense that I've got to have all of these keywords or I'm never going to get to the next level. And they're missing the part that really matters.
Well, some of those tools will stack rank based on the number and the quality and the repetition of the keywords and some of those things that you all believe happens. But again, nobody gets eliminated. Any recruiter worth his salt knows that it's 20% of the people that apply are probably right for the job. So they're going to have to look at almost all of them anyways, even if the keywords aren't there. So junior recruiters may rely on those tools. Senior recruiters, good recruiters, people that know what they're doing, people that really want to serve their managers are not skipping over people in the process. They're looking at people. So again, think about the job. And I don't know how much time we have left, but I think as a tactical tool, one of the best tactical tools is figuring out how to look at a job and figure out what are those 3 or 4 core problems. Do I really match the solution to those 3 or 4 core problems? And so what I told people for years is And I tell people to actually print the ad. I'm a pedantic sort of do the math out loud person. And so I print the ad. And then I tell people, use the principle of primacy. What comes first in each section? So there's the description, there's the company, there's the job duties, there's the qualifications. What comes first? Oftentimes they work from a shell, a canned job description, or they develop a canned one, and then the manager gets it and starts moving things around. And so they'll move the important stuff to the top of each section. So look at the top. And if in the top of each section, you see the same thing, so primacy, and then look for repetition. You see in the top of it, I'm looking for, sales jobs are like this. I'm looking for a hunter. And then it says hunting skills, cold call, blah, blah. Those are all hunting skills, right? And then it says at the bottom, right? Must have 5 years of demonstrated hunting experience. Then you know it's a hunter's job. They need a hunter, which tells you a lot of things about that job. And if you're not a hunter, you should throw that job in the trash and not apply for it. You'll hate it if you get it, right? You'll hate it because you're not a hunter, right? So primacy, repetition. Oftentimes the sentences are really kind of that HR vague. And so look for bullets that are really detailed. If the tone of the detail changes, that tells you somebody wrote something, changed something in that detail. And so look for that detail level. And then again, sometimes in some systems still, 20 years after the advent of the internet, or 30 years after the advent of the internet, these tools still can't translate from a Word document to an HTML document. So sometimes you'll see different fonts. So it'll be a different bullet. That's new stuff. That's stuff they changed from the original template. That's stuff that you should pay attention to. And so look for those things in the job ad. And then when you see the job, then pop out to their career site and see what else you see around that job. If you see one sales job in one region, that means they probably lost somebody and they're trying to replace. If you see 10 sales jobs and a sales manager and a sales director and a go-to-market, that tells you something different, right? What does that tell you? A new product, a new division, a new market. It tells you something different. And so again, you may have patterns in your life, skills, values that really are good for any of those jobs. But if it's a new startup, you might have good stories about that. So you want to focus on that job. So from a practical sense, again, as you look at who am I internally, what things am I really good, what do I really love to do, that's the important stuff. And then what do I see in the job ad? That's how you look through a job ad and say, all right, here's the ones that I should and should not be applying for.
Oh my gosh. When we can take something that we do and take it from a place of understanding, sort of the book knowledge of it, and we have the knowing, and we start to communicate from our place of knowing, that's when we're really going to grab somebody's attention. That's where someone goes, oh, you know how to solve this problem, not in the sense that you've read a book about how to swim and you've never gotten wet, but you've gotten wet and you can strategically help me solve this problem, right?
Almost
and that
drowned
we
a few times.
Yeah, me too. I actually have almost drowned twice in my life, and I'm an excellent swimmer. But when we're doing that, I think that's a lot of what you also help people do is get in touch with who you are, really understand what your strengths are, what your values are, what you align with, what lights you up, what problems do you love to solve? Are you a hunter in a sales job? Or is that like you're the go-getter? You love to go out and create and find new clients? Or is that just not your thing? And how do we start to align that more strategically? And then we're communicating to the people that really need to know, I understand these problems and I have solutions from a place of knowing and execution. And that's really where we're starting to put our Pareto principle into play, where we're taking that 20% and we're getting that 80% return on investment of our energy and our time. And remember that we're putting a hope out there every time we do this. And I love that you said that, because every time we do that, if we're not being strategic about it, then what are we really doing?
There's an old term called self-actualization. You know yourself and then you actualize. And I think of that as self-operationalization, right? And Elsa knows this about me as a recruiting director. You can have all kinds of philosophies about your culture and how you want to act and how you want to do that. But then you have to operationalize. You have to make sure it happens again and again. You have to figure out where it's leaking and where to fix it. And you have to deal with it when you have to fix it. But you have to actualize what you know about yourself. And actualizing in the job search is the way to be more effective, get there faster, and have a lot less pain. Not just pain in the search, but I tell you what, when you get into interviews and people know you solved this problem and they know you don't walk, the interviews are completely different, right? You don't
They
walk
really
in,
are.
You don't walk in with people asking you pretty basic, streamlined, high-level questions. They really start to dig into that background, and you can drive them deeper into that, and you can create that circle where then they tell you more and you tell them more, and you create that bond by doing that. The interviews are completely different. And when you get to offer, if you've really gotten to the deep levels of what those issues and challenges are, offers are better almost always. You can negotiate a lot easier because you're not just a set of skills and a guy that could do the job. You're somebody that really deeply gets them and is deeply connected to that problem. Offers are better. Offers are easier. Interviews are easier. Your onboarding and your starting is a lot easier. This serves purposes all down the line. And so again, there's not. It's funny. I've coached people, and they coach just through the part where they just get to know themselves, and suddenly click, it happens, and they go find jobs. And then other people need more time to build it into their tools and to go do that. But I'm surprised at how often, probably 15-20% of the time, people just do the first part and they go, oh, I'm doing this all wrong. They just have different conversations in their next interviews, and poof, they're off the market, and they go. And so again, it serves you all through the process. But again, it's you, self-actualization, know yourself, actualize that into your job search.
Oh man, this has just been fantastic. And I love what you brought to the conversation and the table today. Thank you so much, Scott. So share with people, what is the best place to connect with you so that people can maybe start getting some strategic help in their career search?
LinkedIn is the primary place. Just ping me on LinkedIn, say you heard this or say you're interested in this. And, I do exploratory calls with people. I never charge for an exploratory call. Happy to talk to anybody. Happy to coach you. If I coached you 1 hour for free and it clicked and you got it and you went and got a job, I'd be the happiest guy on the planet. So LinkedIn is the best way. Just tell people that you heard me on Carol Jean's show, and I'd be more than happy to chit chat with you and help you in your job search.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And you are just an incredible guest, and you really and truly do share so many insights, Scott. So, guys, make sure you go and connect with Scott. And if you are in the thick of it, if you are in the process of job seeking, if maybe you're feeling a little burnt out and really need a good strategy to start doing this in a more strategic way, please reach out to Scott. So guys, keep your eyes peeled for that special article on the Brain Dump blog, going deeper from insights today from Scott Birkhead. And be sure you join us on Tuesday for another empowering episode with our returning guest. He has one of the biggest, most listened to episodes on Beyond Autistic Burnout, Mr. Benjamin Christmas from Australia. We will be going live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, thank you so much for joining us today on Beyond Autistic Burnout. I hope you feel energized and empowered to take on the challenges ahead in the job search. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Let's stay connected. Follow me on social media, join our thriving community, and subscribe to the podcast for more transformative episodes. Together, we'll continue to break free from burnout and unlock our authentic selves every day, as well as in the job search. Until next time, this is Carol Jean Whittington signing off. Keep thriving, my friends.